Hello. So this is my video, what I think about the movie The Message About Muhammad, request video from my Egyptian friend. He is a devout Muslim and a male, about 31, 32 years old, and gave me the link. There was a movie they made in '77. Looked like it was made, American movie. By the time I got around to watching it or listening to it, I didn't watch it. Today it was deleted, so then I watched the cartoon version because that hasn't been deleted. There's a couple of versions of it. I'll put the link of it below. So he wanted me to analyze the movie and my idea of Islam. So the movie is basically about Muhammad, the founder of Islam. He lived, I guess he was born around 590, because around 630 or 632 or something like that, when he was 40 years old, he got a message from the Archangel Gabriel while he was on retreat in a cave just outside of wherever he was, that told him that we should not be following the gods anymore, and that there's only one God, and that we should just pray to that one God, but not have that one God represented as any God, as any doll or statue, trinket, something like that you would pray to, because there was corruption going on, and this happens over and over again. What was happening is that there were back in those days, they had various pilgrimages to the holy places. I think a lot of the holy places were like the watering holes. Watering holes are very sparse out there in Saudi Arabia, which is where I think Muhammad was from Medina, but Mecca was the big capital around there, so he grew up around Mecca, and then he died in Jerusalem. And so people would go to these various watering holes, sacred places, and to give their religious pilgrimages, and they would all bring gods, and they would all have to, their little dolls, and they would have to actually buy various, gods, little dolls and statues and stuff from the priests of the religion that they had back then, just the pagan religion with all their, different gods. And it caused problems because these priests were charging money for them, and then charging more money, and they were just getting rich, and that's all that it was about. And that's the recurring thing of all of the different religions. Jesus was against that. That's why he went into the church and overturned all the tables, because they were all doing business in there. The money changers were converting money and making a lot of money right there in the temple. And he said, "This is the place of God, don't do this." And then Eknat Han in 1300 BC, lived at the same time as Moses, tried to start a monotheistic religion, because all of the priests had their various gods and were making lots of money off it. So he stopped that, and they got angry with him. And when he died, it was a failure. When he died, Egypt went back to polytheism. So Muhammad wasn't the first person to do that, but he was the last big prophet to start a religion. So he was really a popular guy. He was known as Muhammad the Honest, because everybody trusted him. He was he was a rich merchant, just selling horses and stuff. He was married to a woman who was older than him, but really, really wealthy, with lots of horses, and his uncle was a wealthy, tribal leader, and so he had a lot of respect because of his connections, and because of his, he was known as a fair person. And there was an instance when a lot of people were having conflicts with each other, I think having to do with their gods. They were, one guy was saying, you need to pray to my God, and the other guy said, no, my God's more important. And they were all having conflicts, so Muhammad stepped in, and they all respected him, and he deliberated, and he brought peace and became popular for that. But then the problems came up again with all these priests making all this extra money and just being greedy. And it was just all about making money for yourself in the name of religion, pretending that they were the moral authority of everybody else, when in fact they were just the richest people. And then so they were drawing a connection between being the richest, most powerful person is the same thing as being the most moral person that everybody needs to follow and listen to, and not have any personal power of thinking, being able to think for yourself and having a direct connection to God, that you had to go through these rich guys who would sell you the trinkets, sell you the gods, and for way too much money, and then give you permission, anoint you, and which is a recurring thing over and over again. Problems come about when people just care about getting rich and powerful for themselves and suppressing other people and not allowing other people to just make their own way in life. It's like with business, not allowing people to start their own business. The big businesses would make laws so that it's prohibitively expensive to start a business due to having to jump through hoops and pay off the government to have the license to do business or this, that, and the other thing. And so next thing you know, all you have is just big businesses, but they do it all claiming that it's for the good of everybody. Kind of like now, if you want to be a politician, you have to play the game with the big businesses and get 97% of the time in America, the people who win the elections in Congress and Senate are the ones with the most money. But they all lie and say that, oh no, it's all a democracy, and which it is. It's a democracy. We get to vote, but people aren't intelligent enough to just think for themselves and vote for themselves. So, anyways, that's just how it relates. So Muhammad was saying, no, you don't need these guys. Just pray to God yourself and forget about all those little statues. And of course, that made those guys really mad because it was taking their power away and caused problems. But Muhammad was such a influential person that he got people to follow him. And the first person he got to follow him was his wife, Khadijah. He said, Archangel Gabriel came to me and told me to not follow the gods and to tell everybody else that there is only one God for everybody, and that's all you need, just to have a simple life. You don't need any external tools. You don't need to have a shrine or statue or anything like that to protect you. All you need is God. And I guess in those days, because in the movie they were portraying these rich people as saying that they owned your soul. I own your soul. You must you must give me money for me to anoint you with your power. And so Muhammad was like, no, you don't own my soul. My soul isn't a slave to you, but it is a slave to God, the one God. And that was a great idea because, the one God, and saying anybody can be a follower of the one God is a beautiful idea because it takes the power structure away. There's no one person who can claim to be the pathway to salvation, and so nobody owns your soul. Nevertheless, Muhammad was seen as the one messenger for God, but he was in his life he was an honorable person, so he didn't abuse his power. They did have wars though. In the movie, they portrayed, I guess they had a few battles that went on for, I guess, around 20 years because he got his message, his enlightenment at the age of 40, and then he died at the age of 60. So for 20 years he was the leader of the religion, which is a long time. It's longer than Jesus. Jesus was only 3 years. Yeah, there were a lot of wars, and that's how Islam got started. In the movie, I guess it portrayed, well, the people were trying, all the rich religious leaders were trying to snuff Muhammad, so they tried by giving him a bad name, by turning people away from him, you know, getting in the way of his business dealings, and then they decided to try to kill him. And I wasn't really paying attention very well to that part of the movie, but they tried some various things, and he would escape. You know, like one time they tried to wait outside of his tent and then kill him as he got up in the morning to pray. I think it was his idea to pray 5 times a day, starting at 5 in the morning. And but they all fell asleep. And then maybe one time they tried to have a fire, and they tried to burn his tent down or his book down, and everything burned down except for one scrap of paper that said, by the name of God. And that kind of spooked them, because they were like, oh my God, he was protected by some kind of higher force. And yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. I mean, I believe stuff like that. I think there is higher forces. I wouldn't call it God. I think they're actually specific angels that can come down and protect Muhammad, who's destined to start a good religion. There are lots of actual stories like that. They ended up having a war. At one point, there was a caravan and bringing things, I guess, because they had been suppressing the Muslims, who had been becoming a larger and larger tribe. It started with Adija and his friends, and then his powerful uncle decided to join, and then they had some people who were sent to assassinate him, and then they met him, and they liked his idea and decided to convert to his religion. And so more and more people were seeing the sense in his ideas that, you know, life is a lot simpler and easier when you take the middleman out of salvation. You know, they were realizing that they were just leeches on society. They were just sitting on their butts, doing nothing and collecting money and telling people what they could and couldn't do. And so they went against them. In the same way that, you know, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the Jewish priests connived to have Jesus crucified because he was taking their power away. And so then I guess they were, you know, suppressing, and I don't know the details, but I guess there was a caravan of these, you know, anti-Islamic, and then they came, and the Muslims came and stole their stuff, and so then they brought an army, and they had a battle, and they had a few battles, and the person who told me to watch the movie said that part wasn't really historically accurate, but I didn't really understand exactly what he was saying. But yeah, there is a timeline that actually, well, my time has it detailed pretty well too, my timeline. But there's a timeline that the person referred me to, and I'll put the link below, that is an actual detailed timeline of the Islamic wars. You know, the growth of Muhammad and his followers and the religion and all the battles that they had. They had a lot of big battles, and some of them were portrayed in the movie. It was a cartoon. And they just kept winning and winning, and so every time they won a battle, they you know, people had more faith in them, and that God was protecting them, and I was on their side, and they got bigger and bigger. And by the time he died, it was clear that due to, you know, the fact that there were so many Muslims all praying to the one God that is for everybody, all you have to do is believe and follow the one God, that was a better system than the system they had before, where each guy had his own God, you know, and so then they'd fight each other for their little God. It's kind of the same thing as, you know, that's the whole principle of empire. You'd have a kingdom, or, you know, a bunch of little tribes, and they'd always be fighting each other, and so there was just never peace. And so if you have an empire that kind of protects everybody, then you can have peace. Because if one rogue tribe tries to take over, you just go in there and snuff it out. And that's the positive part of empire. And so they started the Islamic Empire, where they all, but you know, a religious-based empire, I think has more potential than like an economically based, you know, militarily based empire, because all the people did believe in one God for everybody. And yeah, the Islamic Empire grew to be the biggest, most successful empire ever. The person who asked me to do this video wanted me to focus on the golden age of Islam mostly. And so yeah, the golden age of Islam lasted up until you know, about 1200, up until Genghis Khan started to come in. So they were going strong, and the most, I think, advanced religion in the world, you know, up until just after the Crusades. And the Crusades, when the Europeans came to the Middle East, they actually learned more from the Muslims, and the Muslims learned from the Europeans. They, you know, the Europeans learned science and learned knowledge and trade, and became, you know, a new interest in ancient Greek literature, because the Muslims were translating all of that. But so now I'll talk about just basically the positive aspects of Islam today. I'll try to focus on the positive aspects, but the negative aspects as well, but how you could, you know, turn those negative aspects into positive aspects. I think, you know, Islam is the best religion in a lot of important ways. The ways that Islam is the best religion is just how it is. It just simplifies what you need to be happy, and to ensure that your soul goes to a happy place when you die. Because and that's, you know, to live a simple life where you don't get bogged down by all of the superfluous, unnecessary, you know, extraneous things that can kind of distract you and kind of you know, drag you down, make you dependent, and you know, bog your life down and make it, you know, make you unhappy in the end. And it's true. The people who live really simple lives are the happiest, I think. Right now, I'm, you know, like me, just living in my house, not leaving the house and just working. I'm happy enough. I'm perfectly happy. If I was out there, you know, traveling to a job that was complicated, and, you know, going and to all the parties and all this and watching movies and just having just a chaotic life, I'd get overwhelmed. And it's good to try to keep things simple. And the Muslims are good at that. If you look at them, you know, if you go to the Middle East and you look at Muslim houses, they're very sparsely decorated. They don't have much art on the walls, and you know, when they pray, all they have is a mat, and they don't have you know, a lot of you know, posters of all their of you know, all the gods, you know, like Buddhists or the Hindus do. And that was one of the commandments of Muhammad. He said, "Don't ever draw a picture of me. Don't ever make a statue of me," because he didn't want to be seen as a god. He didn't want to become a god when he died. That happened a lot in the past. Like, heroes would die and then they become gods, you know, like Hercules. And this was actually written by St. Augustine of Hippo in like 400 AD in Rome. He was an educated man, and he said that, yeah, in the past, all of the gods of of Greece, were actually heroes. They were people. And then they die, and then they become deified, and then people pray to them, and then you know, they ask the god, they ask, you know, Hercules or whatever to you know, grant them favors, and that kind of takes the responsibility out of your own hands and causes you to kind of stop trying, and then you become lazy, and then you lose your way. And that's kind of what was happening with all of those religious leaders from Muhammad's day. Is they were the least religious of all, and the laziest and the most gluttonous, because they just relied on their money and on their reputation and their power and their little statues of all their gods, and pass it off to them. If somebody wanted to have a good business deal or have luck on a journey, they would sacrifice 3 goats to a statue of an imaginary figure. And sacrificing things too much in order to get something is just waste. It's like it doesn't do anybody any good. It just uses up the resources for nothing. But it was interesting in the movie they didn't show Muhammad in the entire movie, because his instructions were never draw a picture of me, never make an image of me, because he didn't want to become one of these gods after he died, because there was that tendency. He just wanted to be the messenger, not God himself, because there was God, there was the great God, but he was the messenger. Just listen to what he said, and then just pray to the one God that anybody can be. I think, I saw in the movie, I thought it was kind of awkward and just weirded me out to see a movie where they wouldn't even show him. I think 1,400 years later, if I were to make the movie, I would, as a non-Muslim, or even as a Muslim, I would say, well, just show him. Because the whole meaning behind that was just to make him like a normal person, not like God. And if you're making a movie, well, you would depict him as just a normal person, so you would show him, because he was just the same as everybody else. If he's the only person in the whole movie that isn't shown, then you're actually defeating the purpose, because you're making him separate from everybody, just like he's a god. And that's not showing him in a movie and acting and just being a normal person, with all the same flaws. Maybe you could have a scar on his face or something, or maybe he was bald, he's just a dude. And showing that would do a better job of making him appear to just be a person who had the message. Instead of like, don't look at him. It's kind of like, don't look at God, or because he's special, he's different from everybody else. So if I was a Muslim, I would say, come on, cut that out. And especially it's a bad idea to try to persecute somebody who's not even Muslim for drawing Muhammad. That's something that he told other Muslims to do, So I don't think people should lose sight of the original reason for something. That just becomes dogma, and believing something just for the sake of believing it, and following tradition just for the sake of following tradition, it encourages you to not think about the actual reason why. And we should all think about that. So, But it did a good job, not making him a god, did a good job of making people just believe in the one God. Because the Islamic Empire was a very successful empire. It extended all the way from Spain to Afghanistan. And they were the first people to do a lot of things. First people to use checks. Somebody in Iraq could buy a bunch of goods from Spain on a check, just on a piece of paper, a promissory note, saying, "Oh yeah, next time I'll give it to you, so loan it to me." And so there was a lot more trust amongst the Muslims than there was due to their higher technology with money than there was from anybody else in the world. And and also, Spain was more advanced than anywhere else in Europe. European royalty would go down to Spain and look at Cordoba and see that the streets were swept and clean, and they had lights all over the streets, and it was a lot more comfortable place to be, but not too overly decorated. And I do think that that's a positive aspect of Islam. That's the part that Islam is the strongest, is how they don't over-decorate things. You know, you can be happy enough just on having a simple life. And when you hear them giving their prayers, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, it makes you feel very peaceful, and you know, quiets the mind down. And when you quiet your mind down, you can feel that subtle energy of God, of Allah, and be at peace. But you know, I think people do get carried away sometimes with that, and try to you know, try to judge other people who may decorate or embellish their lives more than they do, and then say, and just kind of, you know, paint across the board with a wide brush and say, oh, that's bad, you know, like drugs. I mean, like me, I like to smoke marijuana every once in a while, but so imagine me smoking marijuana even every day, you know, where I'm high a few hours a day. But at the end, I still have a more simple life than other people who don't do any drugs, you know. I don't. You know, those people who don't do any drugs, well, maybe they spend a whole lot of money on fast food, and they watch a lot of television, and you know, they drive around to lots of different places they don't have to, you know, and go to lots of different parties just because, you know, they want to be seen or something like that, you know. And I'm just here, up here, smoking marijuana. They could look at me and say, "Oh, you smoke marijuana, you're bad. You're taking the focus away from the simple life." But they actually are living a less simple life than me. So I think it's like, it's good to I think it is good to judge each other, because, you know, it keeps the lines of communication open. But it's not good to judge each other and try to say that you're better than them. You know, it's good if you're going to judge somebody, you have to be very. You have to be able to acknowledge everything, and so I think it's good to acknowledge the positives and the negatives of everything. All the religions in the world have positives and negatives. The religion, so that's the positive aspect of Islam, is that it's very simple, and also Christianity is it's very simple. You know, just believe in God, and there's one God for everybody, and that's all. And don't worry about it. And then you have a religion like Hinduism, which has 30 million gods, and they have all kinds of, you know, spiritual techniques that, you know, breathing techniques that will allow them to hold their breath for an hour at a time. And, you know, some people don't eat for 30 years, and they do this and they do that, but that's positive. That's just the other end of the spectrum with all of the cool, you know, techniques. And, you know, health-related techniques and stuff like that. I think it's great. You know, and a lot of people who are Hindus and do all that complicated stuff live, at the end, they live simpler lives than a lot of hardcore Muslims, you know. How about, you know, compare a Hindu who does all the different breathing techniques and all the yoga and all the chants and all that kind of stuff, but he's a sadhu, and he dresses in a diaper and is homeless. He lives a simpler life than a Muslim who just says Allah Akbar 5 times a day, but he lives in like Saudi Arabia and drives around in a Mercedes and flies all over and hangs out on yachts. You know, I would say that the Hindu is closer to God than the Muslim. So I think it's just, people should just be trusted to do whatever makes them happy, but also keep in mind that you know, if you make your life too complicated, then that can bring you down. And then it's just, everybody's different, you know. We're all different. We all have different things that make us happy, you know, and it goes for everything, like diet, you know. Some people go crazy if they smoke marijuana. Some people calm down. Some people become addicted to alcohol if they have a drink, and some people can handle it. You know, some people are allergic to wheat, and it's good for other people. And so same thing with religious practices. Some people are really limber and they like to stretch, and other people like to lift weights. You know, and it's just it's kind of like it's the paradox. There's a paradox to everything. You can have like rules. You know, like, oh, the simple life is the best, but then the opposite exists also. The more open-minded you are, the more things you're interested in, the better. So you just, at the end, you have to just let people do whatever they want, and just you know, take everything on a case-by-case basis, and never lose sight of the original reason why things happen. And so, you know, being monotheistic and believing in one God forever is, you know, I think it's important to go to the beginning and say, oh yeah, it's because all of those, you know, people, they just got too greedy and it was all about money. And I think that's basically, it's, you know, that's back, you know, it's good to be complicated, but it's also, you know, the answer is very simple. The problem always arises from people being greedy and having their life revolve around money, you know, and that's the same thing as thinking that you're God, you know, like I'm better than you because I have more friends than you, or I have more money than you, and so then I'm going to, you know, use my money to tell you what you can and can't do, and all this kind of stuff. And so that's, and then, you know, in the past they use gods for that. Well, in the present we use money for that, you know. And then social rules, like you can't have an abortion, you know, or you can't do drugs, or this or that or the other thing, taking people's personal powers away from them. And I think that's where modern day Islam is shooting themselves in the foot. You should think very political. You know, if you want people to go to your side, you want people to like you. If people don't like you, they're not going to believe anything you say, and they're only going to see the negative. And so just to say, you know, you are, you know, like America's bad because, you know, you have the Britney Spears dancing around and, oh my God, it's just too much, and you do the drugs and well, that's just how the world's becoming. The world's changing. We're doing more and more things. We've got technology, and, you know, there's lots of different kinds of people. And, you know, if you try to do everything all at once, yeah, maybe you'll you know, become overwhelmed. But you have to take it on a person by person, case by case, you know, basis. And so if you want to make somebody see your side and see the beauty in your religion, just show the positive parts of your religion and be proud of yourself and express yourself, and that's it. You know, you don't have to say, oh, America's so bad because you have all of your big time movie stars who make all the money and they're like the gods, and America's so bad because you know, you attack other countries and America's so bad. If you're going to do that, you should point the finger at yourself too, and acknowledge the negative aspects of yourself. And Muslims, well, the person who I'm communicating with hasn't done that yet. They haven't explained why their country, Egypt, had Mubarak, who was a dictator for 30 years, and he didn't talk about the origins behind that. You know, he didn't take any like self-responsibility or responsibility for his own culture. And Americans do that. We point the finger at ourselves. We have our Alex Joneses talking, you know, trash about our government, and we talk, and I do talk trash about my government. I say negative things about my country. I say positive things about my country. So if you know, people have to be allowed to say whatever they want, and in the end, the people who are allowed to say, the cultures who can say whatever they want, are the ones who are going to have the upper hand, because they're going to be able to express their opinions to people and make more people come to their side. If you don't say anything, and the only time you ever say anything is when you're saying negative things about other people, nobody's going to want to like you. Nobody's going to want to be your friend. People don't like the buzzkill. You know, people want to hang out with the guy who's saying positive things and being cheery and happy, not the guy who's like this. I hate you and I hate him, and it's like, ugh, get away from me. And so that's why, you know, Muslims, a lot of people don't like these Muslims, because they're just pay attention to the negative stuff. You know, like they're like, oh, you know, fire him because you drew a picture of Muhammad, rather than saying, oh, But the reason that we're not supposed to draw a picture, just in case you didn't know, is that, you know, but then to just relax and let it, and be, you know, let it, you know, forgive. As far as, you know, jihad, like you have to fight for what is right. Yeah, that's communication. And these days it's communication. Maybe in the past, in 600, you would have to, you know, use swords and stuff. I mean, everywhere in the world, it was just a militarized society. It's not like that now. It's a communicized society. We're in the age of information, not in the age. I mean, if we all fought, like physically, for what we believe, we'd all die, because we have nuclear bombs and we have guns and, you know, and machine guns and all, you know, neutron bombs and all that. We can't. We have to fight with words. And that's how Muhammad did in the beginning, and Jesus and all of those prophets. They used words. That's why they have the book, the Quran. That's why Muhammad was known as the just one, who was honest and never told a lie. And, you know, he used words. Even before he was visited by Gabriel. He was a communicator, and that's what gave him the power. And so, you know, in the end, the people who communicate the most and express the most are the ones who are going to win. So, in that regard, you know, I think Muslims need to catch up. I don't see any Muslims sharing their ideas on YouTube. Not the you know, the hardcore ones who don't like America. It would be great if I could, you know, you could see Muslims from like Egypt say all the, you know, express their grievances to America and what they think about America and their own country as well. Because if you're only going to talk mean things about the other country, that's just immature. That's what kids do. Oh no, pointing finger at you. Oh no, I'll point the finger at you. It's kind of like wars. Oh, I'll hack you. You know, I'll just hurt you and I'll hurt you. Fight. You don't fight fire with fire. If you fight fire with fire, you just get more fire. You should just talk. You should. You know, we need to look. Believing in one God, Allah. That's one God for everybody. And so, you know, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, they all come from the same tradition. They all have the same prophets, and it's all monotheism. It's the same religion, and I think that you can all agree that they all pray to the same God. So, then we're all children of the same God. So we're all, you know, we're all the same, and that's one problem that the person who's I'm talking to has, is that he just says that, you know, it's all the Jews' fault. But it's not the Jews' fault. I mean, we have these same problems everywhere. The people who Muhammad was fighting in Saudi Arabia at the beginning of Islam, those weren't Jews. Those were the pagans. You know, all of the civil wars that had, you know, religious-based wars, you know, Christians fight against Christians and Muslims fight against Muslims. It's not always, you know, the Jews don't have to show up and be there to be the bad guy every time. Jews are some of my favorite people. I've traveled around a lot and I've seen lots of Israelis, and they're really smart, educated people. The bad guys are the greedy people who just, you know, all they care about is themselves, you know, and making money for themselves and their kind. And Jews are successful because they're smart, and you know, they have a lot of power in America. But I mean, we've never had a Jewish president. We've had Christian presidents every time. And we have one Catholic president, John F. Kennedy. Every other one was a Protestant. Never a Jewish president. The only Jewish politician I can think of is Joe Lieberman. You know, so it's not like Jews control the world. It's just rich people and, you know, connected people and, you know, groups of people who band together. That's what the problem is. But you're creating more, you know, like-minded people banding together to go against the other guy if you're going to point to an entire group of people and say they're all bad. And, you know, we're all born, if you're born into, you know, if we all did that, we would all stay segregated. You know, if the blacks all thought only the blacks were good and the whites were bad, and the whites thought that only the whites were good and the blacks were bad, we'd all be separated and we'd all not like each other and point the finger at each other, and then we just fight. And I think and Muslims today do that too much. If you have that idea about Jews, then you're going to have that idea about another kind of Muslim, and that's why, I mean, what are the countries that have all the civil wars? Syria is having a civil war right now, you know, and if it's not Syria, like, you know, all of the other places, you know, Iran and Iraq were fighting each other, the Sunni and the Shiites fight each other in Iraq. We don't have religious, like Christians fighting each other today in any Western European or Eastern European or American country. We all get along great. So, you know, I mean, I hate to say it, but nowadays, overall, the most inferior religion is Islam because of that. But you're not that far away from, you know, it's kind of like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. All she had to do was clip her heels together and all be fixed. All the Muslims have to do is just say, yeah, the bad guys are those greedy people who only care about, you know, their own little their friends, and trying to keep the power for themselves and the power over everybody else, because of all the rules and power that they have, you know. And that's the problem, not like that religion. It's the whole religion, you know. And as far as talking, you know, saying that Israel doesn't have a right to exist, Israel started and before most of the people alive were even born. So it's an established country. Just let it go, you know. People travel. People have invaded other people since the beginning of time. You know, if we were all to say, oh no, let's reset the world back to how it was 150 years ago before or even our grandparents were born, you know, it would never happen. It's already set in motion. And as far as Israel is concerned, when the Israelis moved in there, like, it was pretty much an abandoned place anyway. It's just desert. They went in, brought technology, and started the agriculture, and then the Palestinians came in, and then they wanted to you know, kind of kick the Israelis out because they didn't like the Jews, and then it started all this conflict. You know, in the 1969 war, with all those countries fighting Israel, they started it. They invaded. And then, you know, so every war Israel has is just a defensive war. Even the last Gaza problem, with all the Palestinians shooting missiles into Israel. They were just attacking, you know, they get Hezbollah to ship arms in to these Palestinians, and then, or maybe it's not even Palestinians, they're just into Palestine, and then lobbing missiles into Israel because, oh, Israel can't exist, and so it's just defensive war. And, you know, it makes you think, you know, if you keep saying, oh, Israel doesn't have the right to exist, and they're lobbing missiles in, and, I mean, it leads me to believe that if they could, they would wipe Israel off the map. But Israel can wipe all of their neighbors off the map if they wanted to, but they don't. So from my point of view, Israel has the moral high ground. And, you know, it's just, you should just look at these other monotheistic religions as just an aspect of your own religion. That's, I mean, in the movie, The Messenger, the country, where was it? I can't remember, but the Muslims went and took refuge at the beginning in a Christian country. And the Christian king said, oh yes, well, let me hear you out. I know you're a new religion and you have your own prophet and it's not Jesus, but let me hear what your idea is. And he said, oh yeah, there's one God for everybody. He's like, oh, that sounds like what Jesus said. Okay, you guys are cool. And he let him move in. You know, and that's the idea that the Israelites should have, you know, with the Palestinians are there. But, you know, they also, and they shouldn't be making all of these settlements out there and trying to encroach into the Palestinian land like that. And, you know, I think there are a lot of, you know, Israelis who give Israel a bad name by trying to do that. And, you know, that's just, but that just goes back to greed. It's not because they're Jews, it's because they're greedy. You know, there's nice people and mean people in every country in the world, and every religion and everything. It's just, you're either good or bad. Like the person who wrote me says, you're either good or bad. And that goes for people, not like a whole group of people. So, you know, I think Muslims really should think. They need to think more politically. If you want people to be on your side, you have to be likable. I'm not going to post all the emails that the person sent me, but they sent me like really, you know, vitriolic emails, you know, calling me names and insulting me. But, you know, and if I were to cut and paste that or say those exact words like in a UN meeting to all the other countries with the whole world watching, people wouldn't want to hear you. They just feel bad and sad, and they just say, oh my God, I don't like this guy or anything he represents. You want to be likable. Those are the people who thrive. So, and that's how Muslims are going to come up in the world. They need to just spread the positive aspects, the simple life, you know, the prayer, you know, not embellishing things, and say, yes, this is why we have, you know, we have our simple Islamic flag. It's just the hammer and the, or whatever, the crescent and the moon, because that's what it means. And, And but leave it at that. Don't say and because you. And they'll just say, well, that's just, you know, what we represent, you know, as contrasted to the American flag, which has all the flags and all that. But not to go overboard and say, and that's why you guys suck, you know. You don't have to do that. That's just gonna, you know, that's just like schoolyard, you know, taunting, and it's immature, and it's not gonna get anybody on their side. And look, America's guilty of the same thing. Like there's the fundamentalist Christians who like to, you know, only point at the negative things that, you know, Muslims. About Islam and saying Islam is a religion of hatred and all that stuff. It's just lies, but you know, those are just the, you know, there's ignorant people in every religion, and you know, America going into invading Iraq, you know, was a bad idea. Killed more than 100,000. You know, Iraqis and like 4,000 Americans at least, and all that money, and it was just for the oil companies, you know. But that's all because of the greed, you know. We have greed everywhere, and so at the end, I think people should just be able to communicate with each other. The person said that, you know, he addressed what I said about you know, Morgan Spurlock went into Saudi Arabia and interviewed the high school kids and said, what do you think about America? And then, you know, the interview was shut down by the teacher and the principal. But and he said, "Oh, it's because Saudi Arabia is the #1, you know, stooge of America, and they would get hurt if they said that." And he was, you know, he was duped by Morgan Spurlock. He wasn't duped by Morgan Spurlock. Morgan Spurlock was just like, hey, was just asking a question. You can ask those kinds of things in America. What this person emailing me, and I think Muslims do a lot, is projection. They just, you know, they suffer from these certain oppressive problems over there, and so they think that we're being oppressed. He was telling me that, like, I have, like, Zionist, like, overlords, you know, and, like, that's just imagination. I hang out in my house all day long. I don't talk to anybody. I don't have Zionist overlords. You're saying that I get on the phone and I'm, like, asking them what to tell me and what to say? I mean, that's how... So I think, you know, that's how it is out in the Middle East, obviously. If people can't express themselves out there, and if people in Saudi Arabia can't say what they think about America, it's not Americans who are going to suppress them, it's Saudi Arabians. So it's like Saudi Arabians, if all these hardcore Muslims hate America, yet they kill each other if somebody says anything positive or negative, or anything negative about America, that's hypocritical. I mean, at the end of the day, if somebody in a country can't say anything, is going to get, you know, hurt or, like, oppressed if they say something, put the blame on the people who will do it, the people who live in that very country. Americans aren't going to go over to America and shoot on a Muslim person for saying positive things about Islam and negative things about America. I mean, you're in their country. That's why would we do that? Why would we waste our energy doing that? We go into those countries to try to, you know, well, in Iraq to try to get their oil, but also for peacekeeping operations to, you know, try to protect the people, and to protect, you know, keep the world safe. You know, don't get carried away and say that, you know, Muslims in the Middle East can't make YouTube videos because Americans will come and hurt you or something, or Americans won't shade. It's part of American culture to make YouTube videos. That's why I do it, and 99% of the videos you see on the internet are from Americans. And that's what Islam should do. I mean, if Islam started uploading videos and expressing themselves, and the person who wrote me said that one reason he's so vitriolic towards me is because he's just going through a hard time. And he didn't even give any actual, examples, but he said going through a hard time, and the reason was because of, like, the Jews. So I guess I mean, that's all I heard. So I guess I'll have to just make it up and say, okay, so he's poor because Israel is somehow taking all the money away from Egypt or something like that. I mean, who knows? God only knows what he means. But that's what I wish you would do, is just upload a video and just express your grievances, the specific things that happened, and why Israel did it. That would be interesting. You know, have the video, the negative things that Israel did to me, and then just list them out and say, yeah, Israel did this, Israel did that, Israel did that. And that wasn't nice. And this is what they should have done, you know. They moved into my uncle was living in Palestine up on the hill, and he owned his land, and then Israel went and kicked him off the land and said that he wasn't, you know, and say that. But don't make it up. Don't like just say, oh yeah, that sounds good, I'm going to make a story up, even if it's not true. Because if you start doing that, you'll eventually get caught. And I'm not saying, I mean, yeah, just be honest and just, you know, just say. And you know, I would like it if you would write me and tell me the story about what happened. Like why, like, because I'm just here guessing. Like, what, are you making this up? You're being so vague. You know, just be specific. But there's positive aspects and negative aspects of every religion. I think the positive aspects of Christianity and Muslim are pretty similar. They're just simple and just believe in God, and that's all. But you know, Hinduism is a beautiful religion also, and Buddhism. They have so many different books and so many different philosophical ideas, and it's all. And you know, the person asked me to talk about the Golden Age of Islam. Well, in the Golden Age of Islam, they were scientists. They were a very complex society, and they were very artistic as well. If you look at you know, what is it, the Shia Muslim, you know, mosques, like the Taj Mahal, that was made by a Muslim, and that's the most intricate building of its day. If you look at it, you know, it was expensive and it's very beautiful, and so, you know, that's making something artistic and elaborate is just an expression of God, of Allah. Allah made the earth, and look how complex the earth is. Look at all the different colors of birds and all the different animals, and you know, all the mountains, and just how all the colors, you know, how beautiful and complex it is. That's also good. And so, and that's one of the good things about America, is that we're complex. And so, yeah, if you just focus on the positive, then people will look at that and say, oh yeah, we like Islam. But if you just focus on the negative, then people say, oh my God, Islam is all about negativity. We don't like that. Get them away from us. And that's what, I mean, if I were to cut and paste all of the, you know, the emails that the person sent me, the people be like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. But look, I understand, because he explained it to me, that he's just upset, and he's, you know, and so I kind of did come to an epiphany, like, you know, Muslims who do the suicide bombing and, you know, and say all of the vitriolic things about America, it's because they're so upset, and they're in such, you know, having such hard circumstances that they're just losing their head, and they're just like, they can't handle it anymore, and they're just freaking out. And so it's kind of like a call for help, and so they really need help. And so that's why when we go into their countries and do the peacekeeping, we shouldn't, you know, bomb them and do drones. Those things, drones are so expensive. Instead of bombing everybody with a drone, just send them, with that money you could provide everybody with a computer. And just say, oh yeah, here's a computer, Taliban. Check us out. No, we have a great society. That's how empires grow. That's how Rome grew. They would go into different, you know, like Gaul, you know, in England, and say, hey, yeah, you guys fight each other. We're Rome. Look at our cool, you know, society we have. Look at how we make wine. Look at how we make beer. Look at how all the nice roads we have. Check out how we make buildings with our cement and all of this. And they're like, oh, cool, you know, and they enticed them and they brought him over and they were into it. That's how, I mean, it's, and the person who wrote me was like, oh no, Rome, they just killed and hacked, you're just paying attention to the negative. That just makes people feel bad. And that's not the truth. You know, the people who are successful are the people who come up, and same thing with businesses, you know, in societies and everybody who are successful are the people who come up with a good business plan, you know, a good idea, and they share it and they say, look, this is great, let's do business together, let's work, and then they go, oh yeah, and then they all come over, and that's how Rome grew. They had a great system, a society that they set up, and people came over and they wanted to. You can't force people to come on your side. It's all because of enticement, and that's what Muslims should do. You know, if all you want to do is fight, you're going to get a fight. If all you want to do is be peaceful, then it's going to be peaceful. You know, I mean, if I were to get really upset and like say, oh fuck you, I hate you, and you were just bad, and just say negative things about Islam, and that's it, then yeah, the person wouldn't like me. But I think the person does think I'm cool and likes me because I'm saying positive things about Islam as well, and I'm also saying negative things about my country, and I'm just seeing the whole picture because I realize that there's one God for everybody, and you know, and it's planet Earth. It's not this country and that country. It's planet Earth. You know, I mean, if the Earth was the size, if the sun, if this is the Earth, the sun would be as big as this room. You're right, and if the sun was as big as grain of sand, the next star would be 3,000 miles away, right? So we're one little planet in the middle of space. One planet, not a bunch of little countries that are different and fighting each other. We're all one planet. And, you know, especially the three monotheistic religions, they're all one religion. They have the same prophets and the same ideas and everything. So to think that they fight each other is just ludicrous. And I think that's, even in the past, that's what, you know, the smart people understood. That's why Saladin, you know, let all the Christians go, and he knew that if he would be, you know, in 1188, kicked him out of Jerusalem, he knew that they would his mercy would be the thing that would make Islam look good and would survive. His story would survive. If he were to kill everybody, well, then that story would survive and he would look bad. So, you know, you want to think politically and be merciful, and you know, and the people who we respect the most are the merciful people who want peace. You know, Jesus. What kind of ideas do Jesus and the person mentioned, Gandhi and Muhammad? These were peaceful people. So if you look up to them, and you look up to you know, Saladin and the Christian king who let the Muslims live there, if you look up to them, then don't you think you should be like them and be peaceful just like them, and not be one of these people who just wants to say negative things and fight and fight? You're just being one of the fighters, the people who just people don't like, and people who are going to use as an example to make you look bad. You know, so yeah, it's interesting how people, I mean, it's beautiful how people deep down know that the peaceful, you know, prophets are the people you should follow, but they still don't get it. And then they say, oh yeah, I love my Jesus. And then they say, yeah, in the name of Jesus, I'm going to go down. They start the crusades. In the name of Jesus, I'm going to kill you, you know, like, and Jesus would be right by my side, killing you. Well, if he would be, then how come he didn't kill anybody when he was alive? And I'm not saying that Muhammad was bad for partaking in those Muslim wars. It was a different situation. They were Christianity started, you know, slower and you know, within an empire that already existed. The Islamic religion started where there wasn't already an empire, where it was just a bunch of tribes, and so they had to create their empire, and so they you know, they had to fight, and they fought for it. Doesn't mean that Muhammad was you know, was like a bloodthirsty, you know, monster. It was just different circumstances. And so that's why it's important to understand history, you know, because you know, take everything by case basis and understand why things happen and how things happen, and just look at the positive, and then you can understand that, you know, the beautiful things about Islam. And it's unfortunate, you know, if the world had been different, if Genghis Khan never had come over and killed all the Muslims, burned all their books, and you know, all those barbarians came in and then kind of created their own Islam that was simpler and more ignorant, and then they got poorer again and more ignorant because people stopped using the Silk Road and, you know, providing wealth that way. They started taking the boats around Cape Horn, and they were kind of isolated in the desert also that whole time, and with the tribes. It's just a place that isn't very conducive to creating a big society with lots of people in big cities, because there just aren't the resources. There's not enough water and, you know, rivers and stuff. And so that's, I mean, it's amazing how they could have started, you know, a big empire like that in a desert. It's another beautiful part of the story of Islam and of Muhammad. But, you know, every religion's different, has its own story, and it's all, if something's successful, then it's successful for a reason. It's because people got along and they were doing great, and so yeah, we can look at the positive side of it. And, you know, Islam is a religion that it's a religion of the future, just like Christianity and Judaism. It's traditions that will last, and they have their special power, you know, strengths that you pump up and make more powerful by focusing on the strengths. But if you're going to focus on other people's weaknesses and then like say that, oh yeah, you're bad and I'm better than you, then it's like, oh my God, that just goes back to that whole this fighting, and it just pisses people off, and, you know, it's not going to be good for you. It's better to be very political. You got to use psychology with people. You know, you're not going to get your horse or your dog to follow your commands if you're whacking him all the time. You know. they're gonna rebel. They're not gonna like that. You get your dog to do things by giving him, you know, treats every time he does well. You know, positive reinforcement. So, yeah, but that movie, The Messenger, was I liked it. I think it did a good job of illustrating how believing in one God for everybody is more positive than than everybody praying to their own God and then thinking that they're better than the other group of people, and it illustrates how, you know, how money takes people over, and then it becomes all about money, and, you know, making and charging all the money for, you know, buying the gods and having permission to do this and that. It's you know, it's the bad guys are always caused by the same thing throughout society, and that's what's so interesting about history, is to just draw the parallels between the bad and then, you know, the parallels between the good also. So that's what I think about that movie and my issues and my ideas about Islam.